Thank you. We have just concluded a long meeting of foreign ministers. First, on Ukraine. We started with breakfast where we had, together with Ireland, we co-hosted a session on the fate of Ukrainian civilian detainees. Thousands are being held illegally in Russian prisons, including in Russian-occupied territories in Ukraine. The evidence of torture, sexual violence, and complete denial of due process is overwhelming. Testimonies we heard today were a powerful reminder that behind every statistic is a human life. And on the territories that we are talking about in the peace process, also it's a question of human fate. The EU continues to pursue accountability. Ministers adopted sanctions targeting Russia's prison system and agreed to increase support to the NGOs helping victims and their families. We also launched a new informal group to coordinate international action for their release. Together with Minister Sybiha, we discussed the battlefield situation and strengthening Ukraine's energy resilience. Next winter, Russia is likely to strike Ukrainian power grid again, so we are preparing. Ukraine needs generators, spare parts, and funding for repairs. Air defense also remains a priority, and I called on those member states who have stocks to make them available to Ukraine. The United States' decision to let Kiev produce Patriot missiles under license is a positive step, even if it takes time. Today was the 9th time in a row that the Foreign Affairs Council imposed new sanctions on Russia. We're sanctioning Russia at unprecedented speed and scale. Today's measures, together with the upcoming 21st sanctions package, hold over 250 listings. This constitutes our biggest round of individual sanctions since Russia's 2022 invasion. The financial backbone of Russia's war machine is the main target. I want to single out one issue specifically. Russian cyber attacks are increasing in scale and severity. For the first time, the EU and the UK simultaneously sanctioned the broader ecosystem that enables these attacks, including criminals, hacktivists, and companies operating on Moscow's behest. This is the largest EU cyber sanctions package ever adopted. The EU will also summon a Russian representative to the European Union over Moscow's cyber campaign. Reducing Russia's capacity to wage war is one thing. Preventing it from being shrugged off as normal is another. The International Olympic Committee's decision to invite Russian athletes back to international competitions is blind to reality. Ministers strongly condemn such decision as it coincides with Russia killing record number of Ukrainian civilians. So it looks like International Olympic Committee is rewarding such attacks. The Commission is ending the funding to Venice Biennale. Culture and support must not become vehicles of whitewashing aggression. It's a long day. Ministers also reviewed the EU Black Sea strategy. Since launch last year, the EU has initiated 65 projects worth around 200 million euros across the region. The Black Sea Maritime Security Hub, led by Romania and Bulgaria together, will help enhance maritime situational awareness and protection of critical infrastructure. We also put forward ambitious connectivity agenda worth billions. Both Armenia and Moldova face external coercion. Last week, the EU announced a major economic support package for Armenia to help counter Russian pressure. Ministers today gave a go-ahead for our new EU mission to begin its work on the ground. EU experts will support the Armenian authorities in dealing with the cyber threats, disinformation, and countering illicit financial flows. Ministers also adopted an additional 120 million euro under the European Peace Facility for Moldova. This is the biggest support package to date and will strengthen the country's air defenses. On the Eastern Mediterranean, Cyprus raised Turkey's plan for a gas pipeline with the island. The EU expects Ankara to respect the sovereignty and sovereign rights of all EU member states. The wider Middle East is stuck in a dangerous cycle of attacks, counterattacks, and fragile ceasefire. Iran strikes on commercial shipping, violating international law and the Memorandum of Understanding. Before the war, the Strait of Hormuz was open to shipping without tolls. After the end of the war, the strait must be open to shipping without tolls. Ministers were clear that navigation must be unimpeded and Iran must never have a nuclear weapon. Our Gulf partners play a vital role in regional stability, and it was good to be joined by GCC representatives. Iran's attacks against Jordan, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain are unacceptable and risk a total collapse of the peace deal or interim peace deal. EU seeks closer ties with the Gulf. Last night, EU and Bahrain launched negotiations of a new strategic partnership agreement with the GCC partners. We discussed the latest development and how we can protect the freedom of navigation both in the Gulf but also in the Red Sea. The Houthi threat persists and Operation Aspides continues to make an important contribution to protect international shipping. And this week, in coming days, I will also travel to the region to inspect the mission myself. In Gaza, the peace process has stalled. Yesterday, I had the discussions with the Palestinian Prime Minister Mustafa on the state of play. The Palestine Donor Group today raised 900 million euros. The EU is the most credible supporter for the Palestinian people. We are the largest donor and the strongest backer of the two-state solution. And this leads me to the West Bank. All the 27 member states agree that Israeli settlements are illegal under international law. Currently, the EU applies a so-called differentiation policy under which products from the settlements are identified. However, this policy has not done much to limit trade with settlements because implementation is inconsistent. Following a request of the European Council in June, the Commission presented options to further restrict trade with illegal Israeli settlements. These include a full or partial ban on imports of settlement products, stricter export licensing requirements, and the possible use of tariffs. These are not options against Israel. These are options against the illegal settlements that undermine the two-state solution. Taking action against the trade with settlements got the most support from the member states. We tasked the ambassadors to take this work forward and probably will also have an extraordinary meeting on this. Then ministers also touched upon EU-UN relations and agreed our priorities ahead of the September's General Assembly. As the UN enters to a period of leadership changes, the choices we make will shape the organization for years. We want to maximize EU influence in the international fora. On Bosnia and Herzegovina, I briefed the ministers on my trip and also the developments regarding the appointment of the new High Representative. Sorry. We are determined to have a European candidate who can help move the country closer to the EU. And ultimately, the success of the High Representative will be measured by the day when it's no longer needed. And finally, Sudan. The humanitarian situation is rapidly deteriorating. Atrocities committed by the Rapid Support Forces against civilians in El Fasher must not be repeated in El Obeid. Today, the EU is expanding its sanctions by banning imports of gold and restricting mining chemicals. This will help cut off key funding sources for the conflict. I will also travel to Ethiopia to discuss the crisis with regional partners. So as you can see, we covered many issues, and that's why the meeting was so long, but I will stop here and take your questions.